The PTR has been updated with the latest round of changes to your favorite classes and specs, and in this video we're going to be going over said changes. And there is some pretty interesting stuff here, especially for demon hunters and rogues, and this is going to be a long one, so strap in and let's get started. And like always, before we begin, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more wild content like this in the future. For Dragonflight Season 3 with Mythic Plus, Throne of the Tides now has updated encounters and enemies throughout the dungeon, and the Jellyfish Elevator has been replaced with a portal, available for testing this week in Mythic Plus's test. Adjustments to the duration of several story scenes in Dawn of the Infinite on Mythic Plus difficulty, and the Yanu encounter in the Everbloom has been updated. The Throne of the Tides changes here actually is pretty interesting to me because I think for just the dungeon in general, it definitely needed some more encounters there, and I could see why, just to get that completion percentage up. And then also with the elevator changes, that's also really smart because, just if you guys get stuck with that elevator and have to wait for it, that's going to really be digging into the time for that dungeon. So the fact that they removed that and just put a portal there in general is going to definitely speed up the dungeon. And now on to the class changes, starting with the Demon Hunter. Many talents have been changed, locations and/or connections. New talent, Champion of the Glaive. Throw Glaive has 2 charges and 10 yards increased range. Fodder to the Flame and Unleashed Power have been removed. Chaos Nova cooldown reduced to 45 seconds from 1 minute, and Fury cost reduced to 25 from 30. Concentrated Sigils no longer increases the sigil duration by 2 seconds. Precise Sigils no longer increases sigil durations by 2 seconds, and Live by the Glaive heal value increased to 4% of max health from 2%. And now for Havoc. Many talents have changed locations or have been combined into choice nodes, primarily among those in the bottom half of the tree. Soul Rend has been renamed to Soul Scar, Initiative's critical strike chance bonus reduced to 10% from 12%. Fell Barrage now has a max duration of 8 seconds, it was originally uncapped, and the Fury cost per volley has been reduced to 8 by 15, and the damage per volley has been reduced by 28.5%. And it looks like they've actually changed the tier set bonuses for patch 10.2 for Havoc, so this is what the new one's going to look like. The 2 set bonus has been redesigned. Blade Dance consumes a charge of Throw Glaive to fire at your primary target for 100% damage, and each slash has a 50% chance to Throw Glaive at an enemy for 35% damage. And then they just updated the 4-piece bonus, they didn't actually redesign it. So Throw Glaive reduces the remaining cooldown of the hunt by 2 seconds, and the hunt's damage over time effect lasts 6 seconds longer. So overall, some really interesting changes here for Havoc. I know the initial reports for the rework, people were saying that the playstyle of Havoc was feeling kind of weird and kind of clunky, and as far as the changes to Throw Glaive, it just looks like they're trying to really just incorporate Throw Glaive into the playstyle of Havoc going forward. And then with Fell Barrage, they recently reworked Fell Barrage so that it acts more like the Frosty K's Breath of Sindragosa. So the nerfs to Fell Barrage are, it's just part of the process. I'm guessing it was just tuned a little bit too high, so this is them just trying to bring it back down a little bit. And now to Vengeance. A few talents have changed locations and/or new connections added. Shear damage increased by 10%, fracture damage increased by 10%, soul cleave damage increased by 7%, and throw glaive damage increased by 30%. Calcified Spikes now provides its benefit if Demon Spikes is refreshed in addition when it expires. Demon Spikes no longer can be cancelled manually. Meteoric Strikes now reduces the cooldown of Infernal Strike by 10 seconds. Fell Flame Fortification now reduces magic damage taken while Immolation Aura is active by 12%. Feast of the Soul's healing value increased by 100% and no longer has an initial tick. Bulk Extraction cooldown reduced by 1 minute. Soul Barrier Absorb value increased by 28%. Fiery Demise now increases your fire damage dealt to enemies afflicted by Fiery Brand by 20 and 50%. And Focused Cleave now increases the soul cleave damage to primary target by 50%. So overall here, Vengeance Demon Hunters are looking really good. Just a ton of buffs to your damage and also your survivability. So I think Vengeance players are eating pretty good right now. And now on to Druid, and let's go with balance. So Star Surge damage increased by 6%, and Shooting Stars damage has been increased by 15%. And these are both not affected by PvP. So a couple of nice little targeted buffs here for balanced Druid's DPS. So now on to Guardian Druid, and it looks like the 2-set bonus has been slightly redesigned. It reads here, the 2-set bonus has been slightly redesigned. Rage you spend during Rage of the Sleeper fuel the growth of Dream Thorns, which wreath you in their protection after Rage of the Sleeper expires, absorbing a percentage of damage dealt to you while the thorns remain up to a value per rage spent. And then Amir Drasil's Dream Hope 4-set bonus, Blazing Thorns value capped at 100% maximum health. And then they fixed an issue that was causing Blazing Thorns damage to be dealt twice. It looks to me like they're kind of just bringing in the reins a little bit as far as the 4-piece bonus for Guardian Druids goes, because I feel like it was actually just a little bit too strong. So unfortunately, Guardian Druids, you guys are just flying way too close to the sun and you guys got burned. Moving on to the Evoker, and the only changes we have here are for Augmentation. So the developer's note says here, our goal with these changes is to reduce the power of stacking as many augmentation buffs as possible on the same 4 targets in raid scenarios. We want to support having multiple augmentation evokers in the raid, but also prevent having 4 of them feel required to do maximum damage. By forcing these buffs to spread themselves out, it should still be viable to have multiple augmentation evokers without feeling overpowered. So here's the changes. If 2 Ebon Mites are actually active on an ally, Ebon Mite will now seek a nearby ally with fewer than 2 Ebon Mites. Ebon Mite's priority to apply to other augmentation evokers has been reduced and will apply to other damage dealing rules first. If 2 Presciences are already active on an ally, Prescience will no longer be able to be applied to that ally. When casting Prescience with an enemy selected, its priority to apply to other augmentation evokers has been reduced and will apply to other damage dealing rules first. Shifting Sands now prefers to apply to an ally who does not already have Shifting Sands. The 4-piece set bonus, Trembling Earth, now allows buff stacks to overlap. Developer's note, with Prescience having 2 charges, there is now a case where you can lose a stack of Trembling Earth since you can precast Prescience twice in a row. To alleviate that, the stacks may now overlap so you don't waste part of the bonus. And this is a really good change because with how augmentation evokers work, it was basically requiring every single raid pull to have like a 20-second pull timer. So the fact that these can now overlap, it's going to make things a lot smoother and you're not going to need that huge setup anymore. And then the changes to Ebon Mite and Prescience are just really good here. The fact that, the way it was working was like, you could just be super sweaty and just try to stack them and make, a couple of people just incredibly powerful in your raids. It's just really bad gameplay. So the fact that they're kind of like spreading it out and making it a lot better so everyone else kind of like shares in the wealth of the powers is just a really good thing. Now on to Hunter. Fixed an issue where several talents or set bonus effects that modified damage dealt or critical damage did not properly affect the damage of the poison injection talent. Beast Mastery. Bonus pets from Call of the Wild now spawn on top of your target rather than your side. This is actually a huge buff because it's going to get rid of the runtime for the pets, running to the target, especially if you're like really far away. So the fact that they just spawn on the target and just start immediately attacking them is really cool. Survival. The empowerment buff from Coordinated Assault now lasts 5 seconds from 3, and then they fixed an issue where Coordinated Assault empowerment buff had the wrong spell description. Moving on to Mage. Arcane. Fixed an issue where clear casting would trigger off non-mage spells. Fixed an issue where gaining clear casting from castating power wouldn't correctly gain all of the clear casting modifiers, including Slipstream's channel while casting benefit. Fixed an issue where consuming a concentration proc would not also grant nether precision if talented. Fixed an issue with Arcane Surge not splashing beyond 5 targets as indicated on the tooltip. And then Siphoning Storm's tooltip has been updated to clarify that it grants 1 arcane charge. So not a lot of huge changes here for Mage, just a lot of cleanup for some errors in the UI. Moving on to Monk. So for Brewmaster, the 4-piece has been changed, so stagger absorb value is now capped at 100% maximum value of your health. This is almost exactly the same change as the 4-piece set bonus for the Guardian Druid, so it sounds to me like the 4-piece is just a little bit too strong for them. And now to Mistweaver. Rising Stone Kick is now granted by default, the location of Healing Elixirs and Zen Pulse has been swapped, starter build has been updated, and then fixed an issue that caused Tear of Morning and Thunder Focus T enveloping mists effects to not be properly increased by 25%. And now for Protection Paladins. Fixed an issue causing misalignment between Consecration and Mastery Divine Bulwark. Moving on to Shadow Priest. Surge of Insanity now triggers from every 2 casts of Devouring Plague from 3. The developer's note here, the Shadow's rotation slowed down more than we were intending from our changes earlier in this patch, and we've seen similar feedback from the community. We maintain our goal to reduce how busy the Shadow rotation is, so we're not reverting Surge of Insanity to its Fury incarnate state, but instead reducing the cast required. We're also increasing the insanity generation from the associated spells to further distinguish their power from their base versions of the spells. And I could definitely attest to that. You know, as someone that's definitely been playing Shadow Priest this last patch, the rotation is just, it's not like complicated, it's just way too, I guess like the good word here is like, there's just too much busy work. So the idea that they're trying to, you know, get rid of some of that is really good. Mind Spike Insanity now generates 8 Insanity from 6. Mind Flay Insanity now generates 16 Insanity over its duration. The 2 set bonus, additional Shadow Word deaths from the set bonuses are now triggered at 20% effectiveness. 2 set bonus, additional Shadow Word deaths from the set bonuses now deal reduced inescapable torment damage. The 4-piece set bonus now increases the initial damage of Shadow Word Pain by 200% per stack, and the 4-piece set bonus now increases the initial damage of Shadow Crash by 100% per stack. And now on to Assassination Rogues. Sanguinate renamed to Sanguine Blades, Envenom damage increased by 8%, Kingsbane damage reduced by 5%, Indiscriminate Carnage secondary stats now prioritize enemies that are not affected by Garrote and Rupture, the Dream's Hope set bonus now deals reduced damage beyond 5 targets, and then they also now deal reduced damage beyond 5 targets from 8 targets. I wonder if this is a typo, and this is kind of highlighting the 2-piece and 4-piece, but I could be wrong. But it sounds to me like they're just kind of doing some, you know, more adjustments to Assassination because of the talent tree update. And now we move on to Outlaw. Triple threat chance to trigger increased by 15%, count the odds chance to trigger reduced by 8% from 10%, and can now also be triggered by Sinister Strike. Hidden opportunity effectiveness of chance to strike twice reduced to 80%, fixed several issues that caused the 4 set bonus to be lost, refreshed the duration of Roll the Bones combat enhancements, now matched other enhancements, and then they fixed some edge cases with the 4 set bonus that basically gave them combat enhancements without a buff. For Subtlety, Shadow Strike damage has been increased by 7%. Perforated Veins effects now applied after striking with Backstab 4 times from 5. The Rotten now causes your next 2 attacks that generate combo points after activating Symbols of Death to deal 35% increased damage. And Replicating Shadow's secondary targets now prioritize enemies that are not affected by Rupture. Moving on to Elemental Shamans, the 4 set bonus Primordial Wave now causes your next 2 Lava Burst casts to strike extra targets. And then for Restoration, Chain Healing has been increased by 20%, so a huge buff here for healing. Moving on to Demonology Warlocks, and we've got a developer's note here. This says, Caustic Presence is doing exceedingly well in single target situations, and even more so when paired with Summoning Demonic Tyrant. This reduction in damage is heavy, but Caustic Presence should retain its identity as a useful AoE-centric talent, while not becoming the correct answer in all situations. Additionally, we want to keep the synergistic benefit of extending Vile Fiend's duration via Summoning Demonic Tyrant to capitalize on a stronger Caustic Presence. Lastly, we are increasing the throughput of Demonology's tier set to align with the throughput of other tier sets. Vile Fiend's Caustic Presence damage reduced by 50%, Eye of Gul'dan now benefits from haste and critical strike chance. Pit Lord now benefits from haste and critical strike. Pit Lord's Fellseeker damage increased by 30%. Doombrand now deals damage reduced beyond 8 targets. Doombrand no longer deals damage when dispelled. Doombrand's damage increased by 150%. Doom Fiend's Doombolt volley damage increased by 150%. Immutable Hatred now has been redesigned. When you consume a demonic core, your primary Felguard carves your target, dealing physical damage. And then for Destruction, Summoning Infernal damage increased by 50%, and Shadowburn damage has been increased by 15%. So all in all, some pretty interesting changes here for Warlocks, especially with Demonology in mind. It's going to be really interesting to see what these changes do. In my opinion, I think it's still going to make Demonology just incredibly OP, but we'll see. Moving on to Warrior. So Arms is just getting a flat 6% increased damage to all of their abilities, which is definitely needed because Arms is just not very strong right now. And then for Protection, the 4-piece, Consuming Thunderous Roar now deals 100% of its remaining damage. Moving on to items in the Great Vault. The Mythic Dungeons row has been renamed to Dungeons. Heroic, Mythic 0, and Time Walking Dungeon runs now unlock rewards to the Dungeons row. These draw from the same reward pools as Mythic Plus, with lower item levels, and then Time Walking Dungeon runs count as Heroic. This is actually a really smart change. This is now going to essentially reward players from doing literally every single type of dungeon in the game and give them rewards. I really like the fact that they're including Heroic and Mythic Zeros into this, so it's basically going to get newer players or people that just, aren't ready to, do Mythic Plus yet, kind of interfacing with the Great Vault and just, giving them some more gear. So that's always great. And now on to professions. So embellishments are getting really big nerfs here. So the following embellishment damage and healing values have been reduced by 35%. Frostfire Belt, Fang Adornments, Slimy Expulsion Boots, Toxic Thorn Foot Wraps, Acidic Hailstone Threads, Magazine of Healing Darts, Playful Spirits Fur Set, Shadow Flame Tempered Armor Patch, Spore Colony Shoulder Guards, a Mice of the Blue Flame damage reduced by 30%, Shadow Flame Tempered Armor Patch self damage has been increased by 33%, and then Dreamwalker's Healing Potion and Potion of the Withering Dreams healing increased by 19%. I have really no idea why Blizzard decided to nerf all the embellishments. I wonder if they just feel like they were just doing too much or they were just way more impactful than they should be. Actually, you know what? Yeah, no, now that I think about it, I wonder if this is just kind of like a way to reduce player damage because of how they just recently increased the item level of, gear in general. So this is probably just them trying to find ways to reduce player power where they can. And now some PvP item changes. Tainted Rageheart Absorb reduced by 50%, Nimoon's Vengeful Luman use effect reduced by 70%, Augury of the Primal Flame's effectiveness of Annihilating Flame proc reduced by 60%, Belorios the Soulstone on-use effect reduced by 75%, Bandaldir of the Twisted Blades on-use effect reduced by 60%, Flourishing Dream Helb's absorption effect reduced by 50%, Rashan the Immortal Blaze damage reduced by 75%, Galak the Final Conflagration damage reduced by 75%, Thorncaller Claw damage over time effect reduced by 60%, Dreambinder Loom of the Great Cycle damage and slow amount reduced by 50%, and the Immobilize does not work against enemy players. Arboreal Necklet absorption reduced by 70%, Incandescent Essence enhancement effects reduced by 70%, and then for the UI, in the auction house, items with long names will always have their effective crafted quality icon shown instead of being cut off. And that is going to do it for today's video. Before you guys go, sound off in the comments section what your thoughts are regarding the changes on the PTR. Thanks again for watching my content. I'm still Solo, and I'll see you guys in the next video.